In 10 seconds, you're going to see an amazing video from the Lean Smarts Academy. To see more, click here and start a free trial today. Welcome to this introductory video about standardization. This topic is a big deal. It may not win a popularity contest or be at the top of the list of your lean manufacturing tools you want to implement, but it is absolutely critical to your success. You will not succeed with lean or Kaizen if you do not practice standardization well. It's why Taiichi Ohno, the founder and architect of the Toyota production system, once said, "Without standards, there can be no Kaizen." If you want to practice Kaizen, if you want to improve, but you do not learn and love standardization in standard work, you're just not going to get there. You will not succeed. So this topic is massively important. It's one that everyone must learn to appreciate and respect. So in this video, I'm going to give a few definitions about what is a standard, what is standardization, and what is standard work, and then give you some reasons why standardization matters so very much. So let's get started. What is a standard? A standard is simply a rule or guideline for how something is done. That's it, pretty simple. It can be used to describe really any characteristic of a process. So here's a list of a few different ways you might create a standard. A process parameter, machine settings, time as in cycle time or other time parameters, layout, parts and materials, equipment and tools, colors, or methods. All of these and more can be described in terms of a standard. You can have a common way, a standard way of doing all of these different things and more. So standards are really everywhere. They apply to absolutely everything that you could be doing. So then what is standardization? Standardization is simply a process for creating or updating a standard. You've got standards or you're missing standards. Well, standardization is what you do when you create a standard or when you take an existing standard and replace it or upgrade it with an improved standard. That's what standardization is. So then what is standard work? Standard work is a unique standard for the methods used to do something. So we're focusing now on the methods, not necessarily all these other criteria like colors or the process parameters or things like that per se, but really the methods I use as a person to get my work done. That's the work sequence, perhaps how much time, what tools I use, and what other tricks I might know as a trained person to get the job done. The methods. That's what standard work is really all about. It's also called standardized work. So those two terms, standard work and standardized work, they can be used interchangeably. It's really the best demonstrated way for doing something. The best demonstrated. It's not just an idea. It's not a theory. It's something that's been proven out and demonstrated, not written at a desk, but rather demonstrated on the floor. If we can do it, then we can write it as a standard. If we can't do it, then we better not be writing it down as a standard. So we've looked at what a standard is, what standardization is, and even standard work or standardized work. Well, why does standardization matter? Why do all of these terms matter? There's a ton of reasons why. I'm going to give you a handful of them here. The first is to improve safety. Safety is a major reason why standardization matters, because if you have a best way of doing things, it should be the safest way. So standards keep people safe. Another reason is to preserve quality. If you've got a best way of doing things, it should result in the highest level of quality. Next, to achieve consistency. The moment you have a standard, you've got a target, and everyone in the organization can be focused on the same target. That creates consistency. No matter how many people you have or how many shifts, you can now be consistent by having a common target. Next is to train people. It's just not possible to train people effectively if you don't have a standard to train them to, and then even a standard training process. Without that, a standard and a standard training process, you're going to have variable results in the training that you perform. Another reason is to measure performance. You cannot measure performance unless you've got a baseline, a standard. Performance is just the gap between your expected level of performance and your actual. The performance is the gap, but you can't measure the gap if you don't have a standard. The next is to solve problems. Whenever you have a problem, a non-conformance or other type of problem, whether internally or externally from a customer, the first question you should ask is there a standard? And next, are we following that standard? And then if you are following the standard, is the standard appropriate? When you use standards well, it really helps problem solving because you know what the heck was happening versus one out of the dozen different ways that people get the job done. The next reason is to demonstrate improvement. You simply cannot demonstrate improvement unless you have a baseline, just like measuring performance. And this in part is what Taiichi Ohno was referencing. You cannot claim Kaizen, you cannot demonstrate Kaizen unless there's a standard, a baseline that you can measure against to say, I have a better way now than we used to do yesterday. Without standards, you just can't demonstrate that. Another reason is to make improvements stick. You might be really gung-ho and excited about Kaizen, but your improvements, your Kaizens, are not going to stick in your organization unless your organization standardizes your improvements. The last reason is to empower you. Standardization makes empowerment possible. Without standards in place, the words "you're empowered" really don't carry much weight. Because no matter what people do, what ideas they have, they're not going to stick, they're not going to be adopted, they really can't transform an organization. So if you believe in empowering people to use their genius to make things better and transform your organization, you've got to use standards. The moment you're using them well, it's easy. If anybody wants to improve things, all they got to do is go through the process of updating a standard. And then it happens. That's what empowerment really means. If you want to get your organization running at a world-class level, it's time for you to join the Lean Smarts Academy, where I've got tons of videos just like this one that are designed to help you grow people and practice continuous improvement on the front line.